harnessing the curiosity of your personas, humanizing your product with your marketing, and blockchain technology in the future of advertising. That and more on this episode of Advertising Influencers.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.
Hello. Hope you're doing very well whenever and wherever you are listening. My name is Ander, marketing educator here at Instapage, and welcome to this episode of Advertising Influencers, where we speak with the best and brightest minds in digital marketing and advertising today. Awesome last episode with Dan McKie, the CMO over at Effin Amazing. He had some really cool things to say about his very own Vice A/B testing framework. Definitely recommend you check it out when you have a chance. But first, stick around for this episode. We're having a really fascinating conversation that is touching on some really new technology in the big scheme of things. Something that has been flying under the radar, hasn't had a whole lot of mass media attention so far. We are talking about cryptocurrencies. We're talking about specifically blockchain, the technology behind cryptocurrencies. And if you haven't heard of cryptocurrencies and blockchain, it is basically a trustless way to make sure that transactions are happening. And that sounds very vague, I know, but we are speaking with an expert today who's going to talk about how blockchain technology is specifically working its way into advertising. His name is Stephen McKie. He is a cryptocurrency and blockchain enthusiast. He's an evangelist and he is an expert. He's been participating in the cryptocurrency space and blockchain space since 2012. He got his start in Bitcoin, one of the most popular cryptocurrencies, when he was studying information systems and technology. However, he's taken his experience in the blockchain space beyond working as an IT specialist and engineer, and he's also tackling product development, growth, marketing, and UX design. Currently, Stephen is running growth and product content at Purseio, which is one of the first cryptocurrency applications that provides a practical application for those new to the space to experiment with the technology. And he'll go into what Purse is, but it's basically a way to purchase products on Amazon with Bitcoin and to save money in the process. He has got a ton of really awesome expertise, and I'm super happy to share this conversation with you. So, without further ado, let's go say hello to Stephen. One of the things that I really enjoy about doing these podcasts is looking at all the new technologies coming out, even technologies that are not directly related to marketing and advertising. Perhaps they had a different primary use case, and looking at how those types of technologies are working their way into different spaces, including, of course, marketing and advertising. And that is going to be some of the subject matter today with the person we are talking to, Stephen McKie. Stephen, thank you so much for coming all the way into our office here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me on the show, man. No problem. I love coming down towards AT&T Park. It's always very sunny.
Yep, right across the street from our office. It makes commuting a little difficult on Giants game days, but it's worth being here.
No, there's nothing wrong with the smell of beer and hot dogs.
True that. Totally agree. Now, I explained a little bit in the introduction who you are, what you do, how you got to where you are now, but I think it's going to sound much better coming from you. So you're the head of growth and product content at Purseio. You're the host, creator, and owner over at BlockChannel, and you've got a lot to say about blockchain and the cryptocurrency space. But why don't you summarize who you are, what you do, and how you got there?
All right, so let's try and think back on how far back I want to go this, because I did this earlier today too. So let me see where I want to begin again. Sure. Let's just start like when I got into the cryptocurrency space and just like leave it there. I got into the space in like 2012, back when I was 21 and I was still in college. In college, I was studying computer science and then ultimately switched over to studying information systems engineering, which is a combination of like systems engineering, project management, and like entrepreneurial, like new business. So like I moved over into that space because I was getting really excited about like the Bitcoin and like the crypto space, and it seemed to be a lot more broad from as far as like what I wanted to study and what I wanted to eventually like specialize in. So I made that move over, and while I was in school, I did a lot of jobs like from like IT consulting and all those other sorts of things. And then ultimately, like before I graduated, I got like a part-time job and I was working at Apple. And I was working on like the retail side, and I was doing business stuff and doing like repairs and all that other sort of stuff, one of the Apple geniuses. And when I was there, I met a couple of individuals who were into Bitcoin mining. and they were mining like specifically like altcoins. And this was in like early 2013. And so I had been in the space for a little while, and I was poor and broke in college, and I was really mad that I couldn't buy a lot of Bitcoin. So I was constantly looking for a way like into the space in order to like, make a quick buck, because everyone else seemed to be doing it. So like I started working with these guys, and they were like, hey, like we've been working like on like mining these different coins, and we sell them into Bitcoin, and we make this money, and we really want to scale it up, and we just need equipment, and we have this facility in Kentucky, and let's work together, and yada yada. And I was like, okay. So I got like some friends together, got together some capital, right? We got all of our parts, we got everything together, we got it all put together, and like for like months we were like mining Dogecoin and Redcoin and a whole bunch of other PAL-based coins. And what we would do is we were taking advantage of the altcoin price swings, and we would like, mine a bunch up like early when a coin like initially came out, and then we like, sell it and we like put it back into Bitcoin. And that went on for a while until eventually like where the facility was, it was in Kentucky, and there was some issues in relation to like heat coming towards the summertime. So ultimately we had already like paid ourselves back for the most part. So we had just sold off the rest of our GPUs and stuff, kind of had called it quits. And it was like during that time, I was like finishing up school, and I did some other side jobs. I did a contracting job with a company called BitReserve, doing essentially rapid response content strategy for them. And I did that for a few months, and that company is now called Uphold. And so I finished up there, and I was like, all right, well, I really want to get into the crypto space, because that was a good taste. Like, what do I do? So I worked a few more months at Apple, graduated, and I sort of like put my feelers out on like where I could go next. And so I got an opportunity to work for a company out here in San Francisco. It wasn't for a crypto company though. It was just for like a regular run-of-the-mill tech company doing like data analytics and stuff. And so I moved out here, took that opportunity. I was there like 8 months, and I was like, man, I hate this stuff. And my head of HR was always like, you're really into this Bitcoin stuff. You're really into this Ether stuff. And you're always talking about it on the internet, yada, yada. And she was like, maybe that's the move you want to go one day. And then one day I decided, I was like, maybe she's right. So I left. And then from there, like I was just sort of like fun employed for a little bit as I was sort of like figuring out like what I wanted to do in the crypto space.
Been there before.
And then everyone's been a little fun employed in Silicon Valley at some point. I went to Launch Festival, which is a hackathon held by Jason, who's like, one of the original like Twitter investors and stuff. He's a really cool guy. And so when I was there, I met Ryan Charles, who was like the cryptocurrency engineer for Reddit back when they were going to put like Bitcoin and Reddit back in the day. And that was like a really big deal. And so he had since left Reddit and was working on this like micropayments like technology thing. And I got really excited about it. And like I went with the hackathon with him, and we had like built this new version like over the weekend, like working with him and like working like logistically, like how it would look, like, like the branding, what was going on there, but like behind the scenes. And then so, he took some of his existing work from working at BitPay and like working in other companies, and we sort of like worked together on that. And while I was working there, I got like a job working at Purse, because I was like, keeping myself afloat. I was like kind of doing my own thing, but at the same time I was like helping these guys with this company. So, we eventually raised a bunch of money for that first company. And then ultimately, like they started like going in a different direction with their project. So like I left that project and instead decided to like assume a full-time role at Purse doing growth and product content that I do now. At some point along that way, I had started like BlockChannel. And so like since then, and since I've been in the space, I've done everything from front end development to like UI, like UX design, to product marketing, to content strategy, to normal like day trading, to like consulting, to you name it, I probably did it at some
Everything
point.
Under the sun.
Yep. That's what you got to do in crypto.
So yeah, let's take a step back here and talk about a couple things. The first is for people who are, and again, I defined this a little bit in the introduction to this episode, but for people who are not familiar with cryptocurrencies and blockchain, what's the simplest way to describe it in like 30 seconds?
Simplest way to describe it would just be that it's a trustless system to allow you to basically share a ledger of all the network participants' transactions and be able to basically securely be custodian of all those different transactions and basically account for everything that goes on in the network. And at the same time, taking advantage of cryptography and what's called proof of work in order to essentially like create a disintermediated network that allows individuals to trustlessly put in value to the system and to pull in value out through a process that's called mining, which is basically where you act as a bookkeeper on that network and you're rewarded for that accordingly. And then so basically everyone who is a participant in this network can be a part of this borderless transactional system where you can send funds almost instantly for a very small fee anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it's really cool. And for the currency component, it's decentralized. So it's not tied directly to gold or to anybody's direct bank account or anything like that. And it's really cool. There's a lot of very exciting things happening within that space. Now, Purse.io. That is something that makes cryptocurrencies and blockchain a little more digestible to consumers. Why don't you tell us about it?
I really appreciate that. Yeah. So Andrew Lee, who was our CEO, who started Purse back in 2014, when they were first looking at the whole Bitcoin ecosystem, Andrew had come out of like the payment space, like working in Atlanta, and he had started like a payment processing company out there that he had sold, and he had worked at like Bank of America, Merrill Lynch. And so he was like really killing the game over in the East Coast in Atlanta. And so, he ultimately met up with an individual, and they founded Purse. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to add utility to the Bitcoin space. And basically kind of our like tagline is like make Bitcoin useful. So, where there wasn't utility for Bitcoin in the past for like easily being able to like buy, sell things online, Purse kind of wanted to come in there and utilize Bitcoin in some like novel manner in order to create a service. So the service we ultimately like created initially, like the first product was like the ability for people to be able to liquidate Amazon gift card, access the gift card balances, and in return for Bitcoin. Ultimately, that sort of evolved into the capability for individuals to complete other orders from like wish lists that are submitted by users in our system, and then in return, like they complete it at like whatever particular discount or like premium. And when they buy and sell that item on Amazon for the gift credit, once that item makes it to the customer, they confirm it, and then they get the Bitcoin that the customer pays into the escrow. So it's like a trustless way for another individual to receive Bitcoin on one end, and then for someone else to like get items at a discount. So there's a double side of like incentives here where there's illiquidity, like in the market for Amazon gift credit, like we provide that there. And then the opposite side, consumers have an incentive to be able to buy and sell with Bitcoin, because usually with onboarding Bitcoin, it's like, why do I get it, right? Well, a great incentive is go save 15 to 33% off anything you want on Amazon. You buy anything on Amazon every day. You buy things on Amazon Prime. You don't need Amazon Prime. Come to Purse, bring your Bitcoin. And, since then we've evolved like substantially. So like that first product I mentioned was called Name Your Discount. And since then we've made this process more and more seamless. And we have another option. It's called Buy Now, where it's literally like you just search our site, just like you would like Amazon, like site or product page, search for your item, add it to your cart, and just pay with Bitcoin. You'll instantly save 5%. And then so like that's all processed through like our network of like liquidity. And so like that's really cool. And then this past year we introduced Purse Merchants. So basically we allow anyone to be able to quickly set up a storefront, list items, like an inventory and like a sales transactional history, and be able to just like quickly sell items. And then people pay into an escrow. And then once they receive their items, you receive Bitcoin. So like anyone can say, you got an extra phone you don't want anymore. You've got old video games, game console, old computer parts, things like that. You can quickly just turn that around for Bitcoin.
Awesome. Now, as you know, and as some of us listening might know, some of us might not know this, there is probably, I would say, the cryptocurrency space is a multi-billion-dollar industry. There is a ton of money being moved around this space, but because it's something that is still not quite mainstream, a lot of big companies have not yet gotten involved, even though it has sparked their interest. And because of that, it's also something that from a consumer point of view, there's a major trust factor involved with, there's this new thing, a new way to deal with my money, to send my money, to buy things, to do anything else that you would do with your finances. So my question for you on that note is, with company like Purseio or any of the other companies that are operating within the blockchain and the cryptocurrency space, what are some of the unique challenges that those companies have to marketing their products and solutions, and how do they overcome those challenges? And if you have any specific stories from Purse, that would be awesome.
Okay. Well, first of all, I guess to sort of understand the marketing that Bitcoin has had thus far, you have to really sort of understand its roots, right? So originally at the heart of Bitcoin is very like libertarian, very like crypto anarchistic, very like cypherpunky, right? So like coming from sort of like that background. And so, a lot of the like early marketing for Bitcoin companies was very technical oriented, like not very like people friendly, very nerdy. It was very like jokey, right? It's just like sort of like showed like kind of a little bit of the inherent immaturity of the space when you get a bunch of geeks together and you give them a lot of money, right? That was a lot of just everyone sort of like feeling out and just saying, hey, we've got this really cool thing here. Like we should kind of clean it up. And, over the years, you've seen like a lot of personal, it's the branding of a lot of these companies where everything had a bit in the name or a coin in the name, and every company had like an orange logo or something like that, right? Everything was just very gaudy for a while, and it was bad. And then now you've got cooler companies that have cleaned up the space and the image, like Gemini and like Coinbase, and say like companies like Purse, where it's just like, very notable. Like we're in the news a lot. People talk about us and like in a positive manner. Like we do a lot of like positive things for the community and stuff like that. So since then, like accordingly, we've moved on from like the kind of the early adopter phase, and we're sort of like moving along now. It's a lot of humanizing this technology and being able to actually like communicate like the true value add for each of these different like Bitcoin related services, and teach people how Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency the company is dealing with, can inject like additional like utility for people. So whether that's like Purse, for instance, where we have customers all over the globe, from places like Venezuela to, Brazil, Argentina, Pakistan, Vietnam, Germany to Australia, everywhere. And so essentially, like, individuals can like buy items from anywhere in the world, drop ship them, receive them at a discount. So when you have places in political turmoil like Venezuela, where they're like, oh, hey, most people make less than like $20 a month. And, so like everyone has like very cheap socialized like electricity, and they're all trying to like get out of this like political turmoil. So they start buying a bunch of mining GPUs and stuff from like Amazon or like through Purse with Bitcoin at a discount to basically try and like escape rapid inflation, hyperinflation that's going on, and trying to like basically opt out of all like that nonsense. And so it's basically the Bitcoin companies are realizing that we have this technology now, we're reaching a certain level of maturity, and it's all about like making sure we tell the appropriate story for the appropriate community that we're looking at.
So I understand all of that from the perspective of people who are already familiar with the crypto space, with blockchain, et cetera. And in that case, really what it's about discovery. It's about them finding Purseio or any of the other companies out there. But what about for something that is ultimately intended to be a consumer product, like Purseio or Coinbase? Coinbase is probably the most consumer-friendly version of an exchange where you can buy and sell Bitcoin or whatever. How do you think those companies, what are some of the challenges that those companies are facing getting through to the non-cryptocurrency community? People who might still have doubts about the technology, about the space, or maybe have just peripherally heard of it through a friend.
Yeah, and well, for a while, a lot of these companies were just banking on the rapid increase in the price of Bitcoin to continue to bring in like a lot of news and bring on like a lot of like speculators and things like that. And, that's one of the really cool, like novel use cases of Bitcoin is like, if you get in like sooner rather than everyone else, like you have an opportunity to make money. And for some reason, a certain number of people, that speculative point of that is enough for them, and they'll hop in. But for a lot of other people who don't necessarily understand like the extrinsic value of money, or like how the Fed works, or like how like inflation works, or how supply and demand works, so they don't have any sort of idea like how that works. And they know that they have a bank card at home that they swipe from Wells Fargo, Bank of America, takes money out of their account. They're normal tax-paying citizens. They file their W-2, they do the things. That's as far as they know about money. And then so like they don't teach you about taxes in high school. I think Lil B made a good rap about that one time in a song where he was like, they don't teach you about taxes in school, but everything's about taxes. It's basically the sort of like the gist there. So as all this political turmoil continues, like geopolitically, like globally, and there's all these issues and like speculations in relation to money, in relation to the Fed, in relation to like potential like war, or just, a lot of people are just kind of at a point where they're like, I want to feel secure. And a lot of people, like maybe they like might not feel secure socially, or they might not feel secure financially or whatever. But, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies have a way to like aid that. And now that we have like so many different use cases out there, it's just a matter of just finding the right use case for the people. I mean, there's always going to be a business for selling people Bitcoin, right? Just being a broker of Bitcoin is always going to be a thing, right? During the gold rush, if you want to make money, you sell pickaxes, right? There will always be a use. Like there's always going to be a need for like a, an e-commerce platform, right? There's always going to be. So like if you solidify yourself as a leader early on, you're going to be great. But as far as unique challenges that are just like ultimately going to stop us, or just like basically impede adoption to where we would want to go, it's mostly just like regulatory and slowly getting the mainstream media to really digest these technologies and like go down the rabbit hole, and like don't just take it superficially, like, shallowly, and like really understand the deep implications of this technology. And all we can do is like continue to be a deep resource and be like open and communicative, and just pull and distill as much of this esoteric knowledge as we can down until enough people see the light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really, really interesting. What do you think it's going to take beyond humanizing, beyond getting people to see the light in order for mainstream media, in order for
just the absolute need that, okay, so for basically you'll have like the tail end of like the adoption, right? Like the laggards, right? You've got your early adopters, and you've got like your normal come alongs, and then it's everyone else, right? Which are basically like, your mom, dads, and your grandmas who are signing up for Facebook this year, right?
Sure.
So, like those folks, Those folks, they're going to take a while to come. They have their own like wants and needs. But, ultimately it's going to come down to, Bitcoin and all this. They appreciate during times of, it's a feature, not a bug. During times of like extreme, like, economic negative, like future speculation. Right. Mm-hmm. So if you say like, we're not going to raise Fed's not going to raise the rates, or, like, do you want strengthening against like the USD, or like, Russia wants to like, try and like crash SWIFT, or, something like, whatever it is, it's eventually something out of necessity, like because of like these economic systems, and just because how like precariously like built that they are, right? They're so fragile, they're so sensitive. Eventually something very major is going to happen, and it's not going to be a question of, do I buy Bitcoin? It's going to be, I have to.
So do you think that for someone who doesn't know anything about it, doesn't even know it exists for that matter, do you think that telling them there is this new way to secure your money that you should know about, do you think that that's, generally speaking, enough to get someone interested?
No, not at all. Because normally when you tell someone secure, you can secure your money personally and no one can get control of it. Oh, you mean like when I put my cash in the bank? And then, that's like their answer. Like to them, it's like, I give that custodial service to the bank. They have a fiduciary obligation to not screw me over and give me my money. And it's FDIC insured and up to like $250,000. My money should be there, so they have that trust there inherently because they've always had that. So, I mean, is that enough for most? It depends.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the person.
It's a super, super difficult question. Yeah. And one of the reasons I'm enjoying this conversation is that there's no easy answer to a lot of this stuff.
There isn't. It's a lot of it is just like discovery as time goes on. Because, I mean, like Bitcoin, ever since the first pizza was bought for 10,000 Bitcoins, that was the first initial price discovery for Bitcoin in a market. Ever since then, it's been an experiment. It went from a techie, nerdy thing from that day to an experiment of us basically figuring out what are the long-term implications here and what the hell have we made.
Yeah, super, super interesting. Now, as we've briefly touched on, the crypto space and blockchain, it's not just about the money component. It's actually a way, I think as you described it, it's a trustless way to manage information, to manage assets, to manage resources, etc. And there are some companies out there, actually I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there's a few companies out there that have found ways to take blockchain technology and apply it to their specific use case, not necessarily in a way that's directly tied to a currency or to money. What are some of the ways that you see that possibly happening with marketing technology and advertising technology in the next few years?
Yeah, excellent. Glad. Yeah. Okay. So for advertising specifically, this is like great. I'm friends with an individual. His name is Brendan Ike. So if you know Brendan Ike is a creator of JavaScript and like helped like start like Firefox, like Mozilla, right? And now he works for a company, founded a company called Brave, which is a new web browser like built atop of like Chromium, which essentially allows like users to like block, all trackers, all ads, like everything like natively by default. Essentially, like you have like this shield. Put your shields up and you are completely, it's like ad block, ghostery, all those cool plugins you use in Google for privacy on Google Chrome, like all tied into one in the web browser through your whole session. And sort of his future vision and what it currently does in its state and form is it allows you to like partner with publishers, and basically you have like an own wallet inside the web browser that you top up with like Bitcoin, and instead of being like served ads and stuff inside like these networks with these publishers, you basically, it takes a tiny little small amount of like your Bitcoin from your wallet and rewards it to these publishers as you spend time on their websites. Basically that's like an alternative means of like income for these companies that don't necessarily want to just like run like ads from like some other sort of like advertising client, right? And then on top of that, recently, Brendan and them debuted something they called the Basic Attention Token, which is really amazing. They just recently had their crowd sale and they raised about $32 million in about 30 seconds and about 2 Ethereum blocks, which were roughly about 18 seconds. So they raised $32 million. And so since then, their token has like debuted on exchanges, and what their tokens plan is it basically works in tandem with this web browser, and essentially it works as a form of like a basic, universal basic income for individuals in like emerging markets, whereas they get paid to actually view those ads online for like their basic attention and what they do online. And then other individuals on the opposite side, on the first world, they're paying to not see those ads. So basically the emerging markets can get paid for their viewing experience. Those that can afford it can like basically, remove those sort of like the excess annoyances. So basically it's a way to like create like this system for attention. So like the more time that you like buy, and like, you can set like rates and limits for like, how much it'll be for like each individual like type and content and publisher. I don't want to explain it like too much in depthly and like really screw anything up. But basically it's just a way to just reward individuals for their time spent viewing things online. So whether that's, right now like viewing a web page or like a video, click on a Forbes article or something like that, or, yada, yada, they would get like, you get rewarded for any ads or something like that you saw on that page. And then in the future, I'd imagine it would be, your time spent watching a video or like, like an ad that pops up in like your timeline or something like that, and you'd be rewarded for that accordingly. I think that's sort of his grander vision. And on top of that too, implementing like what's called like zero knowledge proofs, or some sort of like obfuscated like privacy technology that would allow you to basically be served these ads, but none of these advertisers or trackers have any idea who you actually are. Your actual like unique identifier itself is blind to them, but they have just enough information that they need. And then you can like pick and choose exactly like who you want to like, actually like divulge information to for money.
So there was actually a really interesting article in Advertising Magazine, Ad Age, about what blockchain means for ad tech. Did you see that article?
Mm-hmm.
The summary of the article, and here's a quote from that article, is that, yes, there is an impact on ad tech because establishing, this is a quote, transparency and trust requires a central and secure way to record, review, and execute a deal. Today, deals are typically stored in formats and locations that are disparate and non-standard. Initially creating the standards and enabling collaborations are essential steps in this path. Can you elaborate how blockchain plays into that? Yes. As it relates to advertising?
Yeah. So for instance, a friend of mine who was also my roommate, his name is Amin Soleimani, and he was one of the developers for this company. It's called Ad Token, which was underneath this other company called MetaX, which was underneath this other company, which is called Consensus. And essentially what Ad Token is it's a way to basically pay advertisers who like want to like opt into like a particular network. So basically it's like you apply, like you get like accepted. And then like you're only like served ads through like this sort of like unique like blockchain based like ad token system. Sort of like think of like the most like succinct, simple way to explain it. But
maybe an example.
Yeah. So an example where it would be like, okay, so if I'm like a partner, and I really hope I don't mess this up because Amin is my roommate. So say I'm an advertiser, right? And I want to advertise something on like Gizmodo.com. Then what I would do is like, if I'm Gizmodo.com, then I would be part of like this like ad token network, right? And then I would say like, I want to be served ads by people in the ad token network. And these are the types of ads that I would want, right? And these are types of categories I would like to like, get ads from. And then so people who are the actual advertisers themselves, they would do is like they would apply into like ad token, and then they'd basically like get screened, filtered like through that, and then they would get like paired up with like these different like individuals, right? These different like companies. And then so they would be able to like trustlessly like ensure that these companies that are like onboarding into these like ad-based systems are actually like high quality, and you're not having like just like a bunch of bullshit, or if it's just like a bunch of like AdSense ads fed into a bunch of like weird like SEO content on the internet or something like that, right? Like so it's just a way of like cleaning up the overall quality of the content of ads like on the internet, and also making sure that all the partners are paid fairly along the way, and also automatically.
Wow. That is really, really cool. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I feel like we could talk about this for probably about 3 or 4 hours, but we don't have that kind of time.
Of course,
today.
I know how it works in the podcast world.
Yeah. Speaking of which, you are the host of a podcast. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so I'm a host of a podcast. It's called BlockChannel, and I started it maybe about like 6 months back after working with some friends at the Bitcoin podcast, Dimitrik and Petty and Marcello. And so I was working with them, and they're like, "Hey man, like we like having you on The Voice. We like your opinions. We like your writings. We like you. Like you're cool. Like, do you want to come on the show sometime?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I did that for a while, and they were like, "We should start another show. Like, we really like Ethereum." And I was like, "Yeah, there isn't really anyone talking about
Ethereum's another
cryptocurrency." Yeah. And I was like, "No one's really talking about that, and everyone's talking about Bitcoin, and no one's talking about all these other digital currencies that are also coming up, like Zcash and Litecoin and things like that, right?" So I was like, "All right, well, let's make sure that we can like create an audience for them. So like BlockChannel serves as a mean to like basically interview like the developers from a technical standpoint, like the entrepreneurs, right? Like get feedback on like, you know, how they got into the space, why they're here, where they're going, what projects they're working on, and basically like leave tips and stuff for like the audience and people to like understand like where we're going. And basically like I'll interview like these individuals that do like token offerings inside the space, or I'll interview like cool VCs like Balaji, Srinivasan, and like Andreessen Horowitz. And so like, you know, just like kind of, I guess the best way to do it was like collecting all the mind share inside the space and just trying to like centralize all that information in one place so that we can like reach a larger audience. And like we try to be really fun with it, be really cool and hip with the music. And, you know, we always try and have like a lot of like cool, you know, diverse like guests. And it's just a lot of fun. And it's a great way to meet people, network, and to make sure that we're having the discussions and conversations that we need to be having.
Awesome. I've got one last question for you, Stephen, before we both get on with the rest of our busy days. And this actually is not as related to blockchain and to cryptocurrencies. Where do you think, as the head of growth at Purseio, where do you think the future of marketing is going? And how can we as marketers prepare for that future?
Yeah. Well, okay. So, you know, the future of marketing has definitely, obviously we all know, is completely like all digital now, really. Like digital marketing is just the king now. And, you know, the actual definition of like what digital marketing is, like obviously that's going to like continue to evolve as the space matures. But, you know, I think that as marketing continues to grow, it'll definitely become more automated and a lot more intelligent, where it's just like the systems and stuff where we're getting information from and like reaching the right people at the right time, the right audience in the right way. We're just going to like ultimately, thanks to like blockchain technologies and privacy centric systems and machine learning and like AI and things like that, like we'll like definitely be able to like serve up some really interesting experiences that like gather attention. And really it's just a matter of taking each of those different components like modularly and trying to create different types of cool, innovative experiences that like capture people's attention over time. Like what that exactly like will look like and evolve to outside of things like ad tokens and like, you know, like blockchains and, you know, like all that like instant settlement that like allows all these things to be like really cool and do all these neat things. Like how exactly that will evolve, I'm not sure, because it eventually all comes down to anything that eventually rolls into the blockchain space, just like Bitcoin itself, which eventually became an experiment. All these things slowly become an experiment. So like as all these digital based systems move into like onto like public blockchains and stuff, there's going to be so much potential for like interoperability between all these different systems and what we can create. I can't even like, you know, like sit here and tell you like what sort of things we'll have. So really all I can do is just like sit tight, like be giddy and like try and be at the forefront of it every day.
There are always unknown unknowns.
Unknown unknowns.
And I forget the exact
there
person
are
who said
known knowns. There are known unknowns. There are also unknown unknowns. That's great. I don't know who quoted it. I saw that on Boondocks, the TV show.
I saw that somewhere, but it's totally true. Anyway, Stephen, thanks so much for coming to our office. Super interesting conversation. Looking forward to hearing the next episode of your podcast. I've been listening over the past few weeks or so. And thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot, Anders. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Well, as I said in the beginning of that conversation with Stephen, one of my favorite things to talk about here on Advertising Influencers are the new technologies, even if they're not directly related to advertising and marketing, and how they are becoming related to advertising and marketing. Really excited to see what blockchain ends up doing in the digital marketing space, and I think that we're going to see some really, really cool developments come out of that sometime possibly in the very near future. The show notes and a transcript for this episode, as always, with every other episode, can be found on our website at instapage.com/podcast. And while you're there, feel free to check out any of our other resources. There's a bunch of webinars hosted by yours truly, Ander Frischer. Lots of great information on our blog and some really killer videos that are produced by our all-star video team, in-house video team, I should say, here at Instapage. You're also more than welcome to say hello to us there on social media. Send me an email if you want. It's ander@instapage.com. That's ANDER@instapage.com. I would love to hear from you. All right, my fellow marketers, I am out for now. My name is Ander, and this is Advertising Influencers. Cheers to your future success, and cheers to better marketing. I will talk to you soon.
Advertising Influencers. Conversations with today's top-tier marketers from Silicon Valley and beyond. Powered by Instapage, the most powerful landing page solution.